There we go. Let's try this again. We may have been muted, so I apologize if you hear this twice. Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to be working with you today on making a dish from Pakistan called keema aloo matar. And keema literally means ground meat. It's traditionally done with ground beef. You can also use mutton. You can use ground chicken if you're a little bit more health conscious. Any of these will work just fine. You can also do a mixture, but the most common way, and the one that we're going to do today, is with the ground beef. So it's got the ground beef. Aloo is potatoes. And these will work just fine. You can also do. There we go. And then we have peas as well. We have all of our spices out. And Bismillah, let's get started cooking it. So first thing I'm going to do is turn the stove on, kind of medium high, and I'm going to add a little bit more oil than you might think is necessary. And there's a reason for this, is you really need the oil to fry the onions and fry the meat and blend those spices. So we're going to add right around 1/4 cup of oil. And I'm just using olive oil. You can use vegetable oil, you can use ghee, although I think ghee adds a little bit richer flavor in this. So normally olive oil works perfectly. And you're going to get your oil kind of nice and hot here. Wait a second. I have already pre-sliced the onions. So you'll see them. This is just roughly chopped. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be slices, whatever you prefer. And I usually wait for a minute, toss a single piece in, and if it sizzles, your oil's ready. Oil's not ready yet. If you put the onions in too early and the oil's not hot enough, it will kind of sit there and it makes it heavy. So wait until it does get up to temperature, and when you drop a little piece in there, you'll hear that sizzle. And once you do, you'll know it's ready to start frying the onions. This is not a traditional Ramadan meal. It's not made specifically for Ramadan, although it's often eaten in Ramadan when we open. And one of the reasons it's done is it's quick to make, and it's probably one of the most versatile dishes you will ever have. You can make this as spicy or as plain as you want. We're using peas and carrots today. If someone doesn't like that, you can use just one or the other. You can use bell pepper. You can use cauliflower. You can use a variety of vegetables in that. And you can also just make plain keema with no vegetables added. So playing with this and making it your own is kind of the art of cooking. Once you know the rules, which we're going to go over today, you'll be able to break them in a way that hopefully your family will enjoy. And again, this is a Pakistani dish, but I have cooked it for many, many different groups of people in the past. And with tweaking it just a little bit, particularly having to do with how spicy it is, everyone has enjoyed it. So our oil is getting there, just a little bit longer, and we will have it ready. Already it smells good because we've got the spices already laid out. I don't know if you can see them, but it does. It smells really good, and our oil is just starting to sizzle. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and add all the onions. I don't know if you can hear the sizzle, but there it is. And I brought my old tried and true, a good friend that's been with me on many, many cooking adventures. You can see the burn marks and the stains on it, but I think that just adds to the flavor of the end dish. I really do. So we're going to get the onions going. Now, the onions in this kind of cooking, you really need to cook them until they start to turn kind of reddish brown around the edges. So when they start to turn color, watch them closely. You don't want them to go too much. But when they do start to turn color, that's when you're going to add your whole spices. And our whole spices are cloves, and we are going to have the recipe posted. But we've got about 4 or 5 cloves. We have star anise. We have whole zira, whole cumin, whole black pepper, and whole cinnamon stick. Once the onions get a little bit of color, I will put all of those spices in and fry them for 30-40 seconds until they kind of release the smell. Then I will add all of our other spices and cook them, and then add the meat. And what this does is this roasts the spices and they release an absolutely amazing flavor. Now at home, if you don't have some of the whole spices, you can use ground. If you don't have whole cinnamon, that's fine. Use a little bit of ground. You don't have the whole black pepper, that's fine. Or vice versa. On some of these, if you don't have whole red pepper, you can add more green chilies or you can use whole red pepper. Like I say, it's a very versatile dish and you'll be able to do kind of whatever you want with it. So our onions, not quite ready, but it is starting to get a little bit of color. It's sizzling nicely. It smells amazing. Another reason that I like keema particularly is during Ramadan, when you've been fasting and you work like I do, sometimes you'll come home and, honestly, you're tired. You need to cook something for opening, and most of the stuff you'll have in the house, ground beef, you can always keep in the freezer thawed out. You can put this together in about 30-40 minutes. And as I said, it's a meal that once you tweak it to how your family likes it, it'll be really good. Okay. Another couple minutes on the onions. Another thing that we have here that we're not adding yet, but I wanted you to see, hopefully, is garlic and ginger paste. You can buy garlic and ginger paste from most Indian stores and a lot of regular grocery stores. I personally do not use it. I make my own. I think that it releases too much of the flavor if it's pre-ground. But again, it's convenience. It's how much time you have when you're cooking. So, but it takes just a few minutes in the blender. I throw in, this has about 8 or 9 garlic cloves and probably 1.5 inches of peeled ginger. Blend it together and then it's ready for us to add. I'm going to try to tilt this so you can see. Give me a second here. See the onions getting some color there. And since it's got the color, we're going to go ahead and add our spices, the dry spices, the whole spices. At home, I obviously do not have them all separated like this, but I do put all of the dry spices in a little bowl, and I do put all of the ground spices in a little bowl like this. That way, something's not getting overground while I'm searching the cupboards for the cinnamon. So we've got about 30-40 seconds on this. Fry it up. They'll start to release the aroma of the spices, smelling absolutely amazing. And as that's going, I'm just going to get the rest of them kind of in order here. Once these get just a little bit more, I'm going to go ahead and add our ground spices. So I'm adding turmeric, I'm adding ground cumin, red pepper, and we'll cover a little bit more about red pepper in just a minute here. And we have coriander, and we have garam masala, which we're waiting on the garam masala, and we have fenugreek. Put it in there, do a quick stir. You want to stir this pretty constantly. Spices can burn very quickly. So you're going to do this about 20 seconds just to get the scent out. If it does stick a little bit, have some water nearby. You can pour a little bit of water, like a tablespoon in there to deglaze the pan if you need to. Hopefully you won't. It smells amazing. Got the ground beef ready. We'll go ahead and add it. This is one important part of your keema, and that is breaking down your
your meat. You want the meat to be as small pieces as possible. You really do not want to have chunks of it. You're going to keep breaking it down, keep using it here. Get that meat nice and brown. A lot of the mince meat that we get here in the United States is not as fine as you can get in Pakistan. So this is an important step to break down and keep that as cut up as possible here. Just keep working it, breaking it down. Step over here. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. With the red pepper, what I was going to mention is my family tends to like things a little spicy, to be honest. I love spicy food. If your family does not, use less than what's in the recipe. If your family doesn't like spice at all, you can go without the red pepper. If you can stand it, at least try a pinch, because it does give a flavor, and it's going to be the same when we add the green chilies. When we add the green chilies, you can use serranos, you can use jalapenos, whatever your preference is. And again, if it's going to be too much for you, don't use them at all. One little trick that I've learned over doing this and making it even too spicy for me, if that happens, when you're almost done cooking it, if you add a couple of tablespoons of yogurt, just plain yogurt, and stir it in, it gives a very nice texture and taste, and it will tone down that heat a lot. So should that happen, you do have an out. A lot of times this dish is served with a salad called a raita, which is a yogurt-based salad that has cucumber and other cooling things. So once again, if you were to get something a little bit spicier than maybe you wanted, that helps to kind of cool it down. So we are starting to get some really nice color on the meat here. This is a really important part. You don't want to skip browning this meat, and you want to do it longer than you think you need to, because that really allows the meat and the spices to meld together. It makes the huge difference, this braising. So I'm going to keep it going here. Another thing, I don't know if you can see this. So here's the cinnamon stick that I added. When I am done cooking this, I will usually remove the cinnamon stick, not because I'm worried about whole spices in food. That doesn't bother me. Some people don't like it, but it's never bothered us. But cinnamon is an interesting spice that, so you eat what you want, you refrigerate this, it's still giving out flavor, and it can actually make it a little bit too strong. So when I am done cooking, a lot of times I will take out cinnamon stick, and that's with most of the dishes. All right, we are finally, we've got it nicely minced. There's a little chunk that snuck by. Got it. And this really does smell good. It's making me hungry. All right. Like I said, we tend to like it a little bit spicier. I'm going to add a couple of whole peppers. Fry them up for a minute there. And I am going to add, I have 3 fresh tomatoes. You can also use canned tomato if you don't have fresh. Some people like the texture of it if you run it through a blender and puree it. When I cut it fine like this, it breaks down, and I think that it adds a little bit better flavor than when it's completely broken down. But again,
like I said, it is one of the most versatile dishes. Once you learn the basics, you can do whatever you want to completely make this the way that your family or you would like. All right, so that's doing. I'm going to add some cilantro. And for some people, it seems funny to add cilantro during the cooking, but I actually have the stems of the cilantro cleaned very nicely, of course, and some of the leaves. Comes to about 1/4 of a cup, and you cut those stems up really tiny. I don't know if you can see that, but they have a lot of flavor, and they cook right down. And then when we are finished, we will garnish it with cilantro. Once again, cilantro is a spice that not everyone cares for. If you don't like it, simply don't add it. It won't affect the dish in that sense. All right. Now we're just going to let it cook for a few more minutes. And I have a spice that I'm going to add, not quite yet, but I'm going to explain. It's called Garam Masala. Garam means hot, and masala is spices. And this is a blend of 4 or 5 different spices. You can buy it commercially, most places. You can also blend it yourself. It's quite easy. If anybody's interested in how to do that, they can always send me an email or send me something, and I can tell them how to make their own. Because making your own, of course, is always going to be better. It's fresher than any commercial blend, and it smells so good when you're doing it too. The whole house. All right, and you're cooking through. I like to cook the tomatoes a few minutes so they get soft. And then I'm going to add 2 potatoes. They're cut in about 1/2-inch pieces. Put those in there. Give them a little toss through. And we are going to add our peas. Frozen peas work the best for this. I have tried canned peas. It was terrible. It was so mushy, I can't tell you. I have also done it with fresh peas from my garden. And if you do, I would recommend steaming them lightly first, because those little guys would not cook. Everything else was done. Those little peas were like little pebbles in there the first time I did it. Of course, from the garden, they taste great, but steam them first before you add them. Now, at this point, if you need to, you can turn the heat down just a little bit. You're going to add about 1.5 cups of water. Stir it through. And let it do some cooking here. Another thing about keema is served a variety of different ways for different people. Some people like it a lot wetter, particularly when you eat it with chapati or roti, when you eat it with naan, when you eat it with any of the breads. It's nice to have a little bit drier, which is what we're going to cook today. But if you want to serve it over rice, you can do it a little bit wetter. Again, it completely depends on what your preference is. Another thing, when this is done, it's a meal, it's ready to go, it's delicious, but you can also use this mixture for filling samosas, which are a kind of a deep fried pastry. You can use it to fill pita bread for sandwiches. You can even sprinkle it over lettuce and tomato for a salad the next day. A lot of times in the morning during Ramadan, I will put 2 fried eggs and a good scoop of keema for when we have what we would call the breakfast, when we have sahur. So we would have that because it just kind of sustains you through the day. So this is going to be cooking for a few minutes here. You're basically just waiting to get the potatoes done, to let them get tender. And probably, well, I'll give it another 10 minutes or so, and I will add the spice mixture that I told you about, the garam masala, and we will do that. Meanwhile, another thing that we do, well, this is doing its thing, so you don't just have to stand here and watch the pot boil. Another thing that we do quite often during Ramadan is make a drink called lassi. It's really nice to open your fast with this, and lassi is basically it's a yogurt drink. It's very common. You can do it just plain. You can do it salty. You can do it sweet, which is the one that we're going to be doing today. You can mix fruit in it. I'll take mango puree and add it to this recipe. I've done strawberry puree, which nobody in the family but me enjoyed, and I thought it was amazing, but each to their own. I find for lassi, particularly during Ramadan, that I like the whole milk, preferably the Indian style, which I couldn't get today. But when you've been fasting all day, it's really nice to have something cool, comforting, and it just kind of coats your stomach. You know, don't forget, we've got people who aren't Muslim, so when you fast during this, you don't have water, you don't have anything. And this kind of cools your body down and gets you ready. In my household, what we usually do is we'll have lassi, maybe a little bit of fruit and a few dates. We'll go and say prayers, and then we'll come back and eat our meal. So while the keema's doing its thing, I'm going to show you how to make the lassi. It's very, very simple. It will be, if I can get this to come over here, I apologize. So we're going to take, in our little measuring cup, we're going to take about 1.5 cups of yogurt. And of course, at home, I've gotten so used to this that I don't measure it anymore. I just pour it in, but we've got your 1.5 cups of yogurt. Going to add it to your blender. You can do it without a blender, but because we're going to crush ice in it, it really is better if you have access to one to do it with the blender. I'm going to take milk, and you're going to add 1 cup of milk to the 1.5 cups of yogurt. And then that little bit of water that I had left, which is right around 1/4 cup, we're going to add that. And then, like I mentioned, this is going to be the sweet lassi. So we are going to add 4 tablespoons of sugar, or to taste. Like I say, sometimes people do it with salt, and that is completely to taste. We like the sweet lassi, and I'll admit there's times when I do over the 4 tablespoons, but 4 tablespoons really is enough. And 4. This is something that you want to do right before you serve it. You do not want to blend this and let it sit. It does not taste the same. I've also tried to refrigerate leftovers, and it is nowhere near as good. It just needs to be made fresh. I'm going to step away and grab some ice. So the ice depends on how cold you like it. I'm going to use about 8 or 9 pieces. If you use less ice, or you pour your lassi over the ice without blending it, cut back on the sugar. The sugar, it will taste too sweet if it's not blended in. The lid on this here, and of course it's going to make a really loud noise, so I apologize. Once I figure out this isn't my machine.
You muted yourself.
Sorry. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great, guys. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know, too. All right. Meanwhile, the keema has cooked long enough. We're going to add that garam masala. Put it on there. Stir it through. Potatoes are just starting to get tender. They're not quite there yet. So I'm going to take the lid, put it back on for another couple of minutes, and let it get going here. Now, if you were cooking a Ramadan meal, sometimes just the keema with either rotis, chapati, with naan, or with rice, and I have rice in the rice cooker over there, is enough. Sometimes you're going to want a little bit bigger meal. Maybe people have come over. So you can do a vegetable dish. You can do a dal dish, and dal is lentils, very commonly served with it. A variety of Pakistani salads on the side, the raita that I mentioned, which is the yogurt and cucumber base. There's also one that is very simple, that is cut up onion, cut up tomatoes, no particular ratio, maybe half and half, green pepper, sometimes a little fresh mint from the garden. Pour lemon juice over the top of it, a little bit of salt and black pepper, and toss it. Put that on the side. You've got a full meal completely ready to go. Sometimes, particularly during Ramadan, because it is such a celebration and such a wonderful time, when I make my rice, I will actually add both saffron and a little bit of turmeric to it. So it gets a beautiful yellow tint, and I will put it in a casserole dish. And once the rice is put in and the keema is done, I will put the keema in an oval shape in the middle, leaving the visual of the yellow rice around it, and then sprinkle on green onion and cilantro. And it's very pretty, and it makes just a little bit more festive. So I wish you guys could smell this, because it smells really good here. And because the potatoes are nearly done, and I'm going to be drying this, I'm going to remove the lid. Turn the heat up from a medium to kind of a medium high, because now I want to dry. See if you can see this. There's a lot of liquid in there, and I want to thicken this up. So I'm just going to, and I'm going to watch it a little closer than I was. It doesn't really need a lot of hand holding, but at this point you don't want to burn it. You're so close to being done, and you're just drying the moisture. Got that. And like I say, for the spices at home, I do have a little bowl that I put the dried spices all together and the mixed, but I wanted to put it out so you could actually see what it looks like and how they're added. All right. We are getting there. Well, this is cooking. I'm going to go over and check on our rice, so bear with me a moment. Cooking basmati rice. Well, let me get a little closer here. Cooking basmati rice, also particularly if you have a rice cooker, is very, very easy. You take your rice, you figure out how much you need for the amount of people that you have. Say if you've got 4 people, you all are going to have rice, you're going to want a couple of cups. You're going to wash the rice very carefully, at least 4 or 5 times until the water runs clear. And that's very important with basmati rice, which is usually the rice that's eaten in India and Pakistan. It's a long-grained rice with a really nutty flavor. It's very, very good. You can use other rices. You can use jasmine or Chinese rice if you need to, but it's not going to give the same flavor particularly with Indian and Pakistani food. You really do need that basmati rice. So you take it, you rinse it. You're going to add it to the bowl of your rice cooker. And here's a trick. I used to measure it religiously down to the last drop because I was so worried about it. And I had an older lady who took me aside and asked me what I was doing. And when I told her, she laughed. And she taught me a way of doing it that I'll teach you. And since then, I've never had any trouble with rice. So once you've rinsed your rice, you fill it with water, and you fill it to just past your first knuckle. So there's the first knuckle. Take it up to about there, right in between the two. You add your salt, about a teaspoon of salt. And then, and this is also important with basmati rice, you let it soak. It needs to soak for 15 to 20 minutes. And what that does is it allows the grains, each individual grain, to be long, to be fluffy. It just makes it perfect. And then once you have it soaked, you turn the rice cooker on and let it do its job, and your rice will come out great every time. No more measuring, no more worrying about it. This is starting to dry, starting to look great. I wish you guys were here to enjoy it. But maybe when all of this lifts and we can all be together again, we'll have a chance to share a nice meal all together. That would be wonderful. All right, once this dries, we are done. We have our rice completed. We've got the breads. We have our lassi, which is still nice and icy cold. I don't know if you can see the foam on that too. And like I say, don't forget, you can add things like mango pulp, fresh strawberries, probably even fresh berries. I haven't done it, but I think it would taste amazing. All right, a very short time here, and this will be done. Another thing that's good on this, I don't know if I mentioned, but when your keema is completed and before you serve it, I throw on fresh green onion and the coriander leaves. Also, if you have ginger that you've peeled and you've julienned very, very, very finely and sprinkle on the top, I personally really like that. I think it adds a terrific flavor to it. Some people don't like the crunch or the heat of ginger, so they don't do that. So you'll just have to try a little bit and see what you think about it.
Assalamu alaikum, Leah.
Walaikum salam.
So we have a question. So for the mango lassi, do you just blend all the ingredients together? Can you explain the process of doing the mango lassi?
Absolutely. The easiest way is to buy the mango pulp. It's already pulped and already ready to go. And you add, so if you were to use the same recipe that we had here, which is the 1.5 cups of yogurt, the 1 cup of milk, to that I would add about 1/2 cup of the
the mango pulp, and just blend it all together. You might need to adjust the sweetness because a lot of the mango pulps are pre-sweetened. So you'll just have to taste it because you don't want to add the 4 tablespoons of sugar to something that's already really sweet. So hopefully that helps.
Also, Ellen says hello.
Hi, Ellen, and Emma, if she's there. Does anybody else have any questions about what we're doing here? Or? Since questions are usually better than just watching a pot boil, which is what we're doing. All right, we're getting there. One thing I will say that I've done with this, one time I tried this with eggplant. And for myself, I like eggplant. There's dishes that you may use ground meat and eggplant together. But in the keema, it just, I don't know, it just wasn't the same. But almost any other vegetable that I've ever tried has been amazing with it.
Lisa Patterson said the first Ramadan fast that she broke was in 1977 with Pakistani friends.
Oh, mashallah. That's wonderful. It's nice to find another convert on there. That was one thing. I converted to Islam about 35 years ago. I've been married to a Pakistani, Farouk, for 37 years. I had studied a little bit about Islam, but had not accepted it at the time that we were married. And my first Ramadan was after we were married. Before I accepted Islam, I did it with him. And a few years into it, I did accept it. So, subhanAllah, it's been a huge blessing in my life. Now we are nearly done. This is getting a lot drier. So I'm going to tip this and hopefully you can see it. So this is when it's a little saucier. This is how I like it over rice because I don't like it too dry with the rice, but if I'm going to eat it with the bread, I'm going to keep drying it. Also, just before serving, taste your salt again. Potatoes are great at sucking up all your salt. And what you thought was perfect might not have quite enough. And that's another issue sometimes cooking during Ramadan. It's nice to have a little bit more of a recipe because you're not tasting the food as much as you're going along. I tend to be a taster when I cook. So just before serving, I will double check salt and things like that again. Or, like I mentioned, if you get it too hot, adding a little bit of yogurt at this point would smooth it down so that everybody's not screaming and running from the table with their mouths on fire. That's not the thing that you're looking for. All right, I am now going to turn this up to high just to dry it out. My potatoes are done, everything is done. And I am just drying this. I'm going to do it on high and keep braising it so nothing sticks or burns. Thank you for bearing with us so far. Get my plate ready over here. I'm going to slide these out of the way since we're no longer using them. And standing here talking, this might seem like a dish that requires a lot of care, but really you put it on and let it cook, and except for the end where you're drying it out or the beginning where you're cooking the onions, you can be doing other things around the kitchen. You can be putting together a salad. You can be doing whatever you need to be doing, because it really does take care of itself. Of course, I'm standing here over it a lot more than I would be at home. I would be doing 10 other things at home. All right, we are getting this much, much drier. Nearly done. I'm going to turn my stove off. Make sure I still give it a nice stir so it's not sticking. I'm going to transfer it over to my bowl. Keema is also something that you can make a double batch of and freeze. It freezes very well, except for the potatoes. So if I were making some for dinner tonight and I knew that I wanted to freeze it, I would make sure that however many potatoes I cooked were eaten. They get strange when they're frozen. And then if I wanted potatoes, when I did defrost them for dinner or lunch another time, I would just quickly boil some, get them tender, and add them to it just before serving. It's not quite the same because, of course, they haven't cooked in the spices, but it makes a pretty good alternative. And like I say, the meat and the peas freeze really, really well. All right. Let me set this aside here. Throw a little water in the dish. Sorry about that. I'm going to move this forward. I've got my cilantro ready. And unless it's something that you don't like, it really does add a nice flavor. So we have our rice, or alternative. Well, you could eat it with all three if you want, but it might be, at least for me, it would be a little too many carbs. But you've got your naan, you've got your rotis, and you have your rice. We've got our lassi. We have everything prepared. So thank you for joining us today. Does anybody have any more questions or comments?
I have a question, Leah.
Yes.
So is there any dipping sauces that you can use with this dish?
Well, you don't really need a dipping sauce. Like I mentioned, the cucumber salad, which is you take your yogurt, put it in a bowl. You're going to peel a cucumber and slice it into small pieces and toss it into the yogurt. You're going to add a pinch of salt and black pepper, and that's going to be mostly to your taste. There's probably recipes for it, but I've never followed it. I also add about, depending on how much I'm making, say I was making a bowl about this big, I would fill it up 2/3 of the way with yogurt, add probably half a cucumber. I would take some tomato pieces, just a few, because it can make it kind of runny. Throw the tomato in there. I would add probably a half teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of black pepper, and I would also add, to make it really good, a little secret thing would be to add half a teaspoon of cumin powder, and it really stir it up and let it sit. You can make that earlier. It's nice and cooling on the side. Usually have that with the breads. It's very, very good.
Thank
Was there
you.
anything
I
else?
have one more question, Leah, because I'm a big fan of
Please.
salads. Can you explain to us what is a regular Pakistani salad that you guys would make with this dish?
So the regular Pakistani salad would be the yogurt one that we just talked about, the raita. And the other one that we make almost daily at my house is I will take about half an onion, I'll roughly chop it, I'll throw it in a bowl. I will take tomato, either the little grape tomatoes and cut them in quarters, or a regular tomato and cut them in pieces and toss them in. And then it depends on the day. Sometimes I'll add, cut up and add a serrano pepper or a jalapeno pepper. I'll add fresh, what do you call it? The cilantro again. Mix all of that up. I'll take fresh lemon, kind of roll it on the counter to loosen it up, cut it in half. I'll squeeze it over the top, and then I'll add maybe a teaspoon of water. I'll add a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of black pepper. I'll toss that and let it sit, and that is a Pakistani salad. The other salads that we eat, like an American style lettuce salad, is just not common there. Although I have made kind of my own taco salad out of keema that I had let cool, and regular American salad with lettuce and tomato, and tossed the keema through it, and I really enjoyed it. My husband didn't try it, so I didn't get any feedback there. Was there anything else?
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everyone who came and shared this with us and was kind enough to watch it till the end. Blessed Ramadan.
Jazakallah khairan for coming, and coming last minute too, for taking in this position. I really do appreciate it, Leah. MashaAllah, you've always been a big supporter and contributor to our community. Also, I have one more. If anyone has any questions, I will post Leah's email on the Facebook Live. Also, you can always email maps-MCOC@mapsredmond.org, and we can forward the emails to Leah. Jazakallah khairan, and thank you for everyone joining. Leah, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great honor. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.